But joining us live and exclusive here on NDTV is Kenneth Juster, the former US ambassador to India. Mr. Juster, thank you very much for joining us live and exclusive here on NDTV with your first comments on this great development between New Delhi and Washington, D.C. We've been waiting for this moment to really happen. And finally, Donald Trump, the US president, has announced this. Your first comments. I remember meeting you, you setting the base of India-US relations when you were the ambassador here. What is going through your mind? What was your first reaction?
Well, I'm very gratified. I've been involved in U.S.-Indian relations and trade matters for 25 years, over 25 years, and this is the first deal of this magnitude between the two countries. So it's historic. It still has to be reduced to writing, and a few details need to be ironed out, but it was very important today that the Prime Minister and the President spoke and agreed on a deal, and they'll put out a joint statement. And beyond that, this is really the first phase of what both leaders have said would hopefully be a free trade agreement between the two. And unlike a lot of other deals that were announced earlier between that the United States had with other countries, this is more than just a statement. There have been substantive provisions that have been negotiated between the two sides. So it will really have some content and meat to it.
Well, certainly, it will lead to the free trade agreement between DC and New Delhi. That's what we are waiting for. We're waiting for the blueprint, the final blueprint to come in. What does this really entail? But what does this say about the top priority of the Trump administration, that is regarding the Russian oil? India had increased that significantly over the last 3 years. But now, US President says that Prime Minister Modi has agreed to reduce that to nil. Does this become a win-win situation for DC?
Well, again, I'm not exactly sure as to the details regarding that and how quickly India will reduce its purchases and how far they'll go down. I do know that India already, over the last few months, has been lowering its purchases of Russian oil, in part due to market conditions. And so this is a positive development between the two countries, and hopefully will also help provide the impetus for a peace settlement between Russia and Ukraine. And so the 25% punitive tariffs were taken off and the reciprocal tariffs were reduced from 25 to 18%.
Also, Ambassador Juster, you've been involved in the India-US ties over the last 25 years. India has enjoyed bipartisan support from the United States continuously during the strategic partnership over the last 2 decades as well. What does this say about this critical strategic partnership between India and the United States when it comes to several other important and significant issues? I think, will this build in much more rapport, much more coordination between these countries over the next few years?
Well, the strategic partnership stretches across an entire range of issues that were not really affected by these trade negotiations. The defense relationship has moved forward, the technology relationship, the energy relationship, the space relationship, and so on. But trade has always lagged behind and been a sore subject, and this now helps resolve the tensions on that issue and hopefully will provide even further impetus to the strategic partnership. And in addition, should help energize the Quad, the grouping among the United States, India, Australia, and Japan, with Prime Minister Modi hosting a leadership summit of the Quad, hopefully sometime this year, which would therefore include a visit by President Trump to India, which would be very significant.
Well, yes, we've been waiting for that US President Donald Trump visit to India during his second term as the president. But Ambassador Juster, I was about to ask you about the China angle in Asia. India right now, after the Trump announcement, has the lowest tariffs at 18%. Other competing economies have 19% and above. Could this further be reduced in talks further with some conducive measures that have been assured by Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Indian government? Could we see potentially much more? Because some of the contention areas have been around agriculture and dairy. Do you think these would be no-go areas for both these countries?
Well, again, as we were referring to earlier, this is the first phase of what will be hopefully a free trade agreement. And therefore, as negotiations continue and further reductions are made in either side, this will hopefully bring down that 18% tariff. So I've always said it's important to get this initial phase done, and then there are future opportunities to reduce tariffs even further. And I
Right.
actually think it's in India's interest to open up its economy. It has world-class companies. It will be further integrated into world supply chains. So it's a win-win for both countries.
Well, there's been hectic diplomacy between India and United States over more than a year now. But one comment from you, since you've been a top diplomat of US in India, one comment on Sergio Gore. He landed in India, and many believe that he's somebody who's been very close to the Trump administration and the US president himself, and he perhaps did something here in New Delhi to speed up the entire talks process. Of course, there was the India EU trade deal that happened just a few days ago, but Sergio Gore holding key potential meetings and making this happen. How do you react to that?
Well, I'm not on the inside, so I can't give you specifics, but certainly having a U.S. ambassador on the ground in Delhi is a positive development and can only help on this issue as well as many others. Whether he was directly involved, I don't know. I think the leads were Piyush Goyal, the Minister of Commerce in India, and Jamieson Greer, the U.S. Trade Representatives, and then their subordinates, Brendan Lynch on the United States and Rajesh
All right.
Agrawal. But having an ambassador on the ground has got to be positive, especially one who has a direct line to the president.